it's really good to be among old friends and new friends. And everybody told me I should speak slowly, but we're going to cover a lot of territory. In 1958, history is going to bear apart in some of the things we're going to come across. But in 1958, does anybody remember what unemployment was? Anyone here at all? It was 11%. And in 1958, does anybody remember where the Dow Jones Industrial Average was? 500. 500. We all know it's 10,000. But if you were to listen to the day-to-day and the week-to-week conversations on the media and in the newspapers, you would think America is coming to an end. In 1948, there were two gentlemen. One had the name Sewell Avery. Does anybody know who Sewell Avery was? Classic story. 101 economics. And there were the Rosenwalds at the exact same time. And they had meetings together and they made speeches together. And Sewell's theory was that it was the end of the war. He had graduated Harvard University with an MBA. His theory was to get $1 billion in cash. And so he collected almost $800 million in cash. Rosenwald, he didn't like money. He saw America and what was going to happen in his mind. And so he went out and he expanded Sears Roebuck. And for 19 years, Sewell Avery built 4 stores. Now, we know what happened between those two companies. But even going back to that time, there were the pundits of doom. You can go back 100 years and 200 years, you can find more pundits. There's always pundits of doom. There were always things going wrong. In 1958, you know what the second largest brokerage company in America was behind Merrill Lynch? We're an older group. We're all buddies. Does anybody remember who the second largest, Ralph? You know everything. You remember who the second largest was? The second largest was a company by the name of Francis I. DuPont. They had 42 offices. In 1958, when the market crashed from 500 to 275, they went bankrupt. In 1958, and we'll move forward, but in 1958, you know how you got information on companies? If you were lucky, you went to your brokerage firm and they had a library and they had people with razor blades. And they would get the newspapers. Not 1917, 1960. And they would get the newspapers and they would clip the newspaper articles on General Motors and they would put them in a file. And if there was a security analyst at that time, they would come and look in the file. That's where you were at. Now that's point number 1. We won't go through all the things that occurred since then. Number 2, try to picture this. We live in our little worlds, even those of us who run big companies. Even big companies today are small. When the economy today grows 10% in GNP, does anybody know how much it goes up in dollars? Even close? One number, $1 trillion. We have $11 trillion GNP. Trillion. No one even knows what trillion means. But when it goes up 10%, which it does in a couple of years, because it always seems to grow up, it goes up $1 trillion. So in this system, of which we are still the largest, I want you to picture a world system. Do not picture Palm Beach. Do not picture Boca Raton. Do not picture the United States. Do not picture continents. Picture 7 billion people. And to make a metaphor and a joke, many of those 7 billion people, which we'll get into, are looking to get more bathrooms. Now, within bathrooms, you'll think about it as we go forward. Bathrooms is what it's all about. You become a big executive, what do they hand you? Key in a bathroom. But you see, out there, this is not a joke because this is the reality. Out there, there are tensions. But is any one of you in a family situation where you do not have tension? Is any one of you in a friendly situation with your best friends where there has not been tension? Obviously, human beings from the Bible on through have tension. They have fights, they have disagreements, they fire each other, they don't get along, they get divorced, they do all kinds of things. So consequently, you must understand that tension among governments and tension among people in the world is the norm. But if you pick up the newspaper and you pick up the media and you see that there's tension here or tension there, my gosh, the world is changing. But in fact, it is not. It is staying in 99.9% of the respective things that we talk about exactly the same. Now, if you think about it within these systems, there's the government, there's education, there's legal, there's medical, and there's business and religious, and maybe 3 others. But when we think about our lives, things tend to get very confusing. We think in micro terms. We don't think of a big world system. We think of our business, our family, our little place. Very few people can think in global and universal terms. But the things that affect the big picture are precisely the same things that affect the little picture, okay? Now, the capitalist system, whether you like it or not, with all of its flaws, is the system that we live under. Do you realize, I'm sure you all do, because we're all smart people, how we attack this system and how we destroy this system through many aspects of the political system? Who here knows of total medical expenditures, how much is spent on prescription drugs? What's the percent? 9. Who here knows how much it gets marked up at the retail level from the wholesale level? 40%. Who here knows how much it gets marked up from the wholesale to the retail? Okay. By the time you get down to the drug companies, you're talking a very, very small percentage of total what's spent on healthcare. Now, you know where healthcare dollars go? Secretaries, nurses, administrators, buildings. That's where the healthcare is the same as the army. It's an employment sector in the capitalist system. But it's easy to attack the drug companies, because drug companies, they only have a few 100,000 or a few million voters. And people don't understand. I'm just using this editorially, without the drug companies, there wouldn't be any Zocor, there wouldn't be any Lipitor, there wouldn't be any heart medicine, there wouldn't be this, there wouldn't be that. We'd all be dead. There wouldn't be any antibiotics. But how often do you hear someone get on the television and say, we need these drug companies? You know what Howard Dean says? And I'm not saying if I like Howard Dean or don't like Howard Dean, it's completely irrelevant, okay? He says, President Bush is the administration of corporations by corporations and for corporations. Well, who in the world should he be for? That's all we are. We are one big corporation. You may not like it. You may think that's not a good thing. But that's where the jobs are. That's where you all work. Whether it's your company or my company or Sally's company or Lenny's or Ralph's, I don't care who, or Howard's. The system is one of where population grows and where people have to have jobs to feed their families. And I will add as a parenthetical phrase, the primary function of government is to prevent revolution. That is the primary function of government in the capitalist system, to control